Today, I'm going to share with you one of the greatest symbiotic relationships in the hobby and how to keep a planted tank with little to no equipment. Hello world, how's it going? So, you're having troubles with algae and it's just getting out of control and there's nothing you can do. Well, sometimes light can be a factor or not feeding your plants. But there is a relationship between fish and plants that can make this really easy on you. Now, a lot of my tanks are really matured and it becomes a different ball game after you have them for so long. And say, even if you have a tank that you've just been neglected, haven't had time for, this can make it easy as well, like where you pretty much don't have to do a whole lot. Yes, you got to do a little maintenance, but I'll show you all that. So after dealing with tanks that just get algae like crazy, and it's like no matter what I do, I just can't kick it in some tanks. Mostly the mulm gets really built up and then the algae actually starts eating off the mulm and they kind of just cycle each other. So algae's eating the mulm's creating algae. And you have a tank sitting around, you want it cheap and easy, no filter, none of that. Now, granted, you do have to keep it around 70 degrees. I keep my house warm, so it's easy for me. So you may need a heater. It all depends on how warm you like to keep your house. But if that's what you're looking for, something easy, something that you can keep lots of varieties of plants in, from moderate to even highlight, this is the best symbiotic relationship for that. Now the best fish for this are endlers and guppies. And if you see this tank right here, now I've got a little bit of algae on this spiderwood, but this tank used to be crazy. And you can see a little bit on the substrate, but I was always battling algae in this tank. So this tank is actually being bounced back from just being like the one I was showing you guys earlier where it was just full of algae. That was all it was growing. Now the selection of plants helps as well. These are fast growing plants and they help soak up excess nutrients so the algae doesn't take foot. But what causes this to be the best symbiotic relationship? For instance, here is a plant called Reishi, and it tends to prefer CO2. So what these fish are really good at is providing that for the plants. I have a lot of troubles growing this in tanks without CO2. For some reason it just doesn't work out. But since the numbers can get very numerous and the guppies and endlers cycle a lot of oxygen and CO2 from just breathing, they help feed all the plants what they need. They help feed them that carbon dioxide they need. And they also do a great job of keeping biofilm off the top of the water. So they're constantly eating the biofilm off the top of the water. And not only that, they like to forage off the algae too if they're not getting enough greens. And if you got enough of them in there, they help circulate the water too with their constant moving. So they're always grazing, they're always moving, they're always breathing, which is just great for all these plants. Now I have this tank here, which has a bunch of male endlers in it, and it still works, even though they're not producing babies and just creating a massive amount, but the Reishi is still doing great. But I do battle with algae on the side of the glass in this tank. Now it won't ever grow real long and get crazy like hair algae will because they'll constantly graze at it. But I do have to do some scraping time to time. So there is a little maintenance involved in it. And if you look at these tanks, you'll notice there's no air lines in it. Yes, there's an air line over here, but it's pulled out. Same with that one over there. It's been pulled out. They don't require any airlines. So the only thing you need, this is sand substrate, this is eco-complete. You can use rocks, you can use all kinds of stuff. So all you need is some kind of substrate, whatever you prefer, and get you some plants. Preferably some fast growers, and then throw some slow growers here and there. And since they produce so much CO2, especially if you've got them breeding, then the sky's almost the limit for what kind of plants you could actually keep with them. And as you can see from all these males, there's a lot of varieties and types of endlers and guppies. These are all mostly endlers, but it doesn't matter which kind you get. Especially, like I mentioned before, if they're breeding for you. Now I do have some tanks that have the air on them, and really it doesn't really make much of a difference whether it has air or not. I almost prefer it without it. But I also know that's a good backup, which I've never had anything happen, and I don't see any way anything could happen with killing these fish without any air in it, because they can breathe off the top of the water. And I have to get views like this, because if I don't, see? It's terrible. So bright. And I actually recently rescaped this tank. This one was completely full as well with that algae. It was moss. For some reason, these fish and moss, it's a little different story. I think it's because their waste builds up underneath the moss, and then the algae eats off of that. For some reason, it always ends up creating a bunch of hair algae within the moss, which is really hard to battle because it's almost next to impossible to get hair algae out of moss. So it doesn't work too well with moss. About any other type of plant, you're golden. But you can see a little bit bouncing back on the sponge filter. Now if the sponge filter wasn't in there, I wouldn't even be having the problem, besides what's on the rock. Which eventually, when they breed out enough, they'll end up just eating it all. So whenever I do my water changes, I'll just get the little bit that's out of there and pull it out with the hose. And yeah, it's a lot easier to maintain. So easy maintenance. And this one's actually been fixing green water. I was battling green water in here real bad because my crypts melted back and there's tons of organics left in it. And they've actually helped bounce back the green water. And it actually helped with how many is in here as well, because all the fry were able to hide in the green water, live off the green water. So now this is just loaded with pingu guppies. It's still got a little tint of green water in it, but man, they do amazing work for fighting all kinds of algae. And adding a bottom dweller like a pleco, or even cory cats or something, or auto sinkless on the bottom. Snails are definitely beneficial to stick in this environment to make it more symbiotic. They'll do great work at keeping the sides of the glass clean for you, so you won't even have to do that maintenance. But you'll have to make sure you keep your plecos fed as well. A couple days ago, this thing was just full of diatoms and green algae, and the pleco just made quick work of it. Now it's fresh and clean. Now the fish's waste will also feed the plants as well. And if there's not enough plants in the tank, a little algae may start popping up. But over in time, the biomass of plants and then the biomass of fish should balance themselves out. And it doesn't take them very long to do it either, since they are working together. Now I'm interested to know what your favorite endler or guppy is. If you let me know in the comments section below whether you've been keeping them for a while or it's something that you've been wanting and can't get, let me know what kind of endler and guppies you guys like. I know I have some favorites, but I'm curious what your guys's are. And maybe this way I'll be able to see some new endlers and guppies that I didn't even know exist. So to get a super easy planted tank like this, all you need is some kind of substrate, like I mentioned, sand, rock, eco-complete, whatever. Research your plants, most of them will do good, and just add endlers and guppies in water, and that's it. And it does help to feed your plants, remember that. And I have a video on how to do that, which I'll link up at the end of this video. Alright, so there you go. That's one of the best symbiotic relationships I believe is in the hobby. I know there's some really good ones out there. Well, I guess beneficial bacteria and fish, that's probably one of the best and first and foremost ones. But this is definitely one of the best symbiotic relationships. And if you're looking to keep a tank easily, cheaply, and just have something full of life without having to put a lot into it, there's so many guppies and endlers that come in amazing colors, amazing patterns. You can create your own. It's wild the things you can do with them, which I do have videos on that. So if you liked it, hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed, go ahead and do that already. Hit the notification bell. That'll keep you up to date to all this, because I am doing new creation breeding projects with endlers and guppies and all kinds of things with them, as well as a bunch of other stuff. So I'll give you a second to hit that notification bell. There you go. Thank you. And also, please share this with all your friends. Get them to tanks and aquariums, because the bigger we get this hobby, the better it goes. So, as always, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you guys learned something. And until next time, peace and love.